The night of the 21st of August, 1986, a lake in Cameroon killed 1,746 people. No explosion, no warning, no sound at all. The victims died in their sleep, every single one of them. The killer was invisible, odorless, and rose from the bottom of a lake that looked like any other. Lake Nyos sits in the crater of an ancient volcano in the northwest region of Cameroon. The water is deep and dark, fed by volcanic springs far below the surface. The lake is over 200 meters deep, its bottom resting on rock that still carries the heat of the earth, Sanato. On its shores, several small villages had existed for generations. Farmers, families, children who swam in the shallows, cattle grazed on the grass that grew thick near the water's edge. The soil was rich from volcanic minerals. The valley was a good place to live. The lake was beautiful, still peaceful. No one knew it was a weapon. Beneath the surface, something had been building for centuries. Carbon dioxide from volcanic magma had been seeping into the lake. As deepest waters, dissolving under the immense pressure of 200 meters of water above it, the gas entered slowly, grain by grain, year after year, century after century. The deepest layers of water became saturated, then supersaturated, holding more sea oil than any lake should contain. Think of a bottle of soda, sealed, pressurized. The gas stays dissolved as long as nothing disturbs it. Lake Nyos was that bottle, and someone was about to shake it. 2 years earlier, in Itenjo-by-Bashasi, a smaller lake called Monon had released a gas cloud just 30 kilometers away. 37 people died in their sleep. The event was mysterious, unexplained. Scientists suspected something unusual, but could not agree on what. No one connected it to Lake Nyos. No one warned the villages. On the evening of August Ashimlt, something triggered a release. To this day, no one knows what. A landslide, a storm, a small earthquake, or perhaps nothing at all. Perhaps the lake simply could not hold any more. At around 9:30 in the evening, a column of water erupted from the lake's surface, 100 meters high, a fountain of black water shooting into the night sky. The lake turned deep red as iron. Rich water from the bottom churned to the surface and oxidized in the air. The water itself was bleeding, and then the gas came. Between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide erupted from the lake in a single catastrophic outgassing. The gas cloud was 50 meters thick, invisible, odorless, and heavier than air. It did not rise. It did not disperse. It rolled downhill, like an invisible flood pouring into the valleys where people slept. The cloud moved at 20 to 50 kilometers per hour, faster than anyone could run. It poured over the shores of the lake and down into the valleys, filling every depression in the landscape like water filling a bowl. Vegetation did not burn, trees did not fall. The gas simply replaced the air. Everything that breathed died. Everything that did not breathe survived. Joseph Fonquain was inside his home when the cloud arrived. He later told investigators, "I heard my daughter snoring in a terrible way. Very abnormal. That sound was the sound of a human being suffocating from the inside." Carbon dioxide displaces oxygen in the lungs. You breathe, but nothing comes in. Your body panics, your chest heaves. But every breath is empty. Joseph tried to stand. He collapsed. His body was shutting down from oxygen deprivation. When he fell, his daughter was already dead. All across the valley, people died in their beds. Mothers, fathers, children, entire families. They never woke up. Their bodies simply shut down, silently, as the gas filled every valley. By morning, 1,746 people were dead, 3,500 livestock, gone in a single night. Insects fell from the air. Birds dropped from branches. The valley was silent in a way it had never been silent before. The gas was so concentrated that it killed everything that breathed, but left structures untouched. Houses stood with doors open. Animals lay dead in their pens. People remained in their beds, eyes closed, as if they had simply chosen not to wake. Meals sat on tables, half eaten. Cooking fires had burned down to ash. Survivors reported a strange smell of gunpowder that was not there. Olfactory hallucinations caused by CO affecting the brain. Even their senses had lied to them in the final moment. Scientists were horrified. Only 2 limnic eruptions have ever been recorded in human history, both in Cameroon. The word limnic comes from the Greek word for lake. It means a body of water that kills. Years later, they discovered that Lake Kivu, on the border of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, is also supersaturated, 2,000 times larger than Lake Nyos. Millions of people live on its shores, cities, towns, fishing villages. They cook their meals and walk their children to school on top of the same invisible threat. Degassing pipes have been installed at Nyos to slowly vent the sea. A single fountain of water rises from the center of the lake, releasing the gas a little at a time. But Lake Kivu is far too vast for any such measure. The trigger for the eruption is still unknown. It could happen again at any time. The lake still holds its breath, and no one knows when it will exhale. There is a town in Pennsylvania where the ground is hot beneath your feet, where smoke rises from cracks in the earth, where the cemetery on the hill has fire burning behind it. A fire has been burning beneath Centralia for over 60 years, and it will burn for 250 more. Centralia was a quiet coal mining town in Columbia County, population around 1,400, built on top of some of the richest anthracite coal deposits in the United States. Mining had been the reason the town existed since the 1860s. Generations of miners had gone underground, carving out tunnels that stretched for miles beneath the streets. By the early 1960s, most of the mines had closed. The coal companies had moved on. The town was shrinking, but the people who remained loved it. It was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors, where children played in the streets until dark. But the coal beneath it was far from gone. Abandoned mine tunnels ran under the town like a second city, dark, empty, waiting. A labyrinth of passages stretching for miles, connecting to seams of anthracite that had never been touched. In May of 1962, the town council ordered a routine cleanup of the landfill. The landfill sat at the edge of town, near an abandoned strip mine. They set the trash on fire, as they had done many times before. The fire burned. The firefighters hosed it down. Everyone went home, but the fire did not go out. It burned deeper, past the trash, into the exposed coal seam beneath the landfill, and from there into the abandoned mine tunnels. The fire found a labyrinth of passages stretching under the entire town. And it began to spread. At first, no one noticed. The fire spread slowly through the coal vein, smoldering underground. No flames, no visible smoke, just heat creeping beneath the streets. The town tried to put it out, multiple times. They dug trenches to create fire breaks. The fire went around them. They built clay barriers underground. They pumped thousands of gallons of water into the mines. The water boiled away. Nothing worked. Every attempt failed. The fire kept spreading. By the 1970s, the fire was under the town itself. Residents reported basement floors that were hot to the touch. Fumes seeping through cracks in foundations, carbon monoxide detectors going off inside homes, Snow melting in strange patterns on the ground, leaving bare patches in the middle of winter. In some places, you could feel the heat through the soles of your shoes. In 1979, a gas station owner named John Coddington stuck a thermometer into his underground fuel tank. It read 172 degrees Fahrenheit. The fire was directly beneath him, burning under the fuel, under the pumps, under the ground where he stood every day. He closed the station immediately. The ground began to open. Steam and smoke vented from cracks in the earth. The soil was too hot to touch. In some backyards, the grass turned yellow and died in perfect circles. Centralia was becoming something else. A town on top of a furnace. Then, on the 14th of February, 1981, the ground tried to swallow a child. 12-year-old Todd Dombosky was playing in his grandmother's backyard. The earth opened beneath his feet. He fell into a sinkhole 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep. 150 feet, straight down into the burning mine. He caught himself on a root protruding from the wall, screaming for help. His cousin heard him and pulled him out. The steam rising from that hole contained lethal levels of carbon monoxide. If Todd had breathed it in down there, he would have been dead before anyone reached him. After that, the government could no longer ignore what was happening. Pennsylvania declared a state of emergency. Congress allocated $42 million for relocation. Most residents fought to stay. They said their homes were safe, that the fire would burn itself out. Some had lived in Centralia their entire lives. Their parents were buried in the cemetery on the hill. But the ground kept splitting. The air kept poisoning. Route 61, the main highway through town, began to crack and buckle from underground heat. The asphalt softened and split, smoke curled from the gaps. The state closed it permanently. One by one, the houses were demolished. Families relocated. Streets emptied. The government bought the properties and tore them down. Block by block. Today, Centralia is a ghost. The streets remain, but the houses are gone, reclaimed by forest. You can still walk the old sidewalks, now leading nowhere. Foundations where living rooms once stood. 5 residents remain as of 2020, living under an agreement that allows them to stay until they die. After they are gone, the state will take the land. The cemetery on the hill still has smoke rising behind it. The dead rest above a fire that never rests. The fire now underlies 400 acres. There is enough coal beneath Centralia to keep it burning for another 250 years. No one can stop it. No one can put it out. It is one of the most contaminated places in America. And 5 people still call it home. On the night of the 24th of February, 1978, 5 young men drove into the mountains of Northern California. They were heading home from a basketball game. They never arrived. Their car was found on a road they had no reason to be on. Their belongings arranged in a line at the edge of a forest, and 4 of them were found scattered across a mountainside, dead. The 5 men were from Yuba County, a rural community in the Central Valley of California. Jack Madruga, 24, Jackie Whitt, 24, Ted Weyer, 32, Gary Mathias, 25, and Sterling Marston, 27. All 5 had mild intellectual disabilities. They were close friends, known in their community. They worked local jobs, lived with their families, played basketball together. They looked out for each other. They were a group, a unit. Their families knew where they were. On that Friday evening, they drove to Chico to watch a college basketball game. It was a normal night, a normal outing. They sat together in the stands, cheering with the crowd. After the game, they got into Jack, his car, and headed south for home. The drive should have taken about an hour. It was getting dark. Snow was beginning to fall on the mountain roads. They never made it. When the families reported them missing, a search began across the rugged terrain of the Sierra Nevada foothills. Helicopters scanned the ridgelines. Volunteers walked the trails. Dogs followed scent trails into the forest. But the mountains were vast, and the winter snow was deep. 3 days later, the car was found. It was on a remote mountain road called Plumas, but road high in the forest, stuck in a snowdrift, abandoned. This road was miles from their route home. There was no logical reason they would have taken it. No shortcut, no detour sign, nothing. Yet somehow, they had driven deep into the mountains, far from anywhere they needed to be. The road was unpaved, narrow, and climbing. It led nowhere useful. The car was in working order. The keys were in the ignition. The fuel tank was half full. The engine would have started. But the men had not stayed with it. Footprints led away from the car, further into the forest, away from the road, away from help, uphill, into the snow and the dark. The footprints showed no signs of struggle, no dragging, no running. They had walked calmly, deliberately, into the wilderness. The search intensified. Hundreds of volunteers, aircraft, dogs. But the winter was brutal, and the mountains were vast. Snow covered the trails, avalanches blocked the ravines. Weeks passed, then months. The families held on to hope that the men had found shelter somewhere, that they were alive, waiting to be found. When the snow began to melt in spring, the mountain gave up its dead. The first body was found in April. Ted Wayher was discovered near an abandoned Forest Service trailer, miles from the car. He had made it inside. He had found blankets. There was food in the trailer, canned goods, supplies. But he had not been able to figure out how to light the propane heater. He had not been able to open the cans. He had wrapped himself in those blankets and slowly frozen to death in the dark. Surrounded by food he could not reach. Warmth he could not unlock. The second body was found weeks later in a creek swollen with snowmelt. The third under a fallen tree on a steep slope, as if he had crawled there for shelter. The fourth was found in June, his remains scattered by animals on a remote ridge. Each body was found further from the car, further from help. Further uphill, the fifth body was never found. Gary Matthias vanished into that mountain, and the mountain kept him. Searchers combed every ridge, every ravine, every stand of trees. Nothing, not a trace. As if he had walked off the edge of the world. But the most disturbing detail was not the bodies. At the edge of the forest, searchers found something that made no sense. Their shoes and jackets arranged in a neat line, as if they had deliberately undressed and walked barefoot into the freezing wilderness. No rational person does that. Investigators theorized paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon where severe hypothermia causes the body to feel burning hot in its final stages. The dying brain sends confused signals. The victim tears off their clothes, believing they are on fire. But that does not explain the neat arrangement, the order, the deliberateness. Paradoxical undressing is frantic, chaotic. Clothes are scattered, not lined up. Someone placed those shoes and jackets with care. No one knows why they left the road, why they walked uphill, why they undressed. The case remains unsolved. The families never got answers. They never will. The mountain kept its secrets, and the forest grows over the old roads, as if none of it ever happened.